Good evening. I'm Jim Harriott, and this is 30 Minutes, a local magazine for television. In a moment, we'll look at page 1. By now, we're all aware of air and water pollution, but we're just beginning to realize the scope of another problem, one I call ear pollution, noise, and it can be every bit as dangerous as other problems with the environment. This chart shows some familiar and at times excessive sounds, from the level of weakest sound heard by a young person with excellent hearing, up to what can be deadly, the scream of a rocket engine. The Seattle City Council and the King County Council have been working on joint ordinances for months now, ordinances which on January 1st will begin providing noise control regulations which are more strict than state controls. People are beginning to become more aware of clamor, din, hubbub, racket, unharmonious sound, noise. But let's begin with a basic difference between the organ which gives us our sense of sight and that which provides our sense of sound. The eye has a smoothly working defense mechanism. When there's too much light, the iris contracts, letting in less light. Then, too, you blink, or even close the eyes completely, shutting out the annoying light. But the ear has no lids, no such defense against unwanted sound. And the ear cannot be turned off, not even in sleep. All the excess sound, the noise, goes right in. And we're only beginning to understand what that can do to us. I'm talking with Dr. Peter Bricey, an associate professor in the Department of Environmental Health here at the University of Washington. Dr. Bricey, what does noise do to us?
Well, noise, of course, can produce both a physical effect, that is, it can produce damage to the hearing mechanism. It can have a non-auditory effect, and it also can have an effect on the individual's mental outlook and well-being.
How does the damage get done?
The damage gets done when the individual is exposed to excessive sound. One of the facts that occurs is that a vasoconstriction, or a narrowing of the blood vessels, occur, and this in turn limits the oxygen to the very delicate tissues in the inner ear.
Where does that happen? Can you show?
Yes, as you can see, the ear is made up of 3 portions: the outer ear, the middle ear, and the inner ear. The inner ear is important because it's here where the nerve cells are stimulated by the hair cells that move in relationship to the sound as it impinges on the hair cells, which sets up an electrical current, which in turn then transmits the current to the brain. And in that manner, we determine both the frequency and the intensity of the sound.
Now, when there's a constriction, that means less oxygen, and less oxygen eventually means death of the cells?
Less oxygen means eventual destruction of the cells.
Well, let's talk about a worker who is in a high sound situation. And when they're asked about that, invariably they'll say, oh, you get used to it. Do we really get used to it?
You really don't get used to sound. 2 things occur in the working environment, because here you're exposed to some of the highest levels over the longest periods of time of any environmental factor. You really don't get used to the sound. Either you suffer hearing loss to the point where now it takes a higher energy or a greater decibel level to hear the noise, or you have an effect, say, when you get home. We've questioned wives and children who say when their husbands gets home or work in a noisy environment that the least little noise that the child or the wife makes in the house, the husband yells, "I've been exposed to sound all day, damn it, I don't need any more noise."
They just want to go somewhere and sit.
They just want to go somewhere and sit. So they may get used to sound as far as their working environment is concerned, but the effect extends over to the point when they come home.
We decided to go out on the street with Dr. Richard Wade from the Seattle King County Health Department, along with his sound level meter, to measure some of the noise we encountered in city traffic, in a commercial area, and also an area where people live.
When this light changes, you'll be able to pick up the acceleration of this truck, depending on how hard he hits the accelerator. He was about 79 dB, which is very quiet.
This is a weekday morning, and we're about at the peak traffic time. So let's stop here at the corner and see what we have in the way of decibel readings and noise going by, primarily, I guess, in cars and trucks. Now here comes a large truck, and he stopped for the light. Let's see what happens when he lets off the air brakes. Here we go.
He peaked out at 98 decibels. Again, we're closer than 50 feet, but he is fairly loud.
In other words, the chances are he would be over the line.
Yeah, very well. He could be over the standards.
What's the maximum he could be fined for something like that?
The maximum would be $25 per citation.
Every time?
Yes, for every time he's picked out.
Is there a limit on the number of those kind of write-ups you can get?
No, there's no upper limit on those.
But it can get expensive.
Yes, it can be very expensive. If a person repeatedly and willfully and knowingly continues to repeat violations, then it becomes a misdemeanor subject to criminal action.
We're in a residential area here on Queen Anne. A car just went by. It sounded like it needed a motor tune-up. Now, for this area, what would be the norm?
The standards during daylight hours would be 55 decibels, and then during the evening hours and night would drop down to 45. Here at this time, we're recording about 62 decibels. The difference being mostly aircraft noise coming across Elliott Bay.
One company which would be strongly affected financially by these new noise regulations is a public utility. I talked with Jack Wood, staff engineer at Washington Natural Gas. What would it take to bring company facilities into line with these regulations?
In the facilities that at some time during the year would exceed the levels as they're presently stated, it would take a barrier-type concept to ensure meeting the levels in the ordinance.
An enclosure?
An enclosure. And that enclosure has to be of a certain height to guard against skirting around the enclosure. It has to be fully enclosed with no holes in it. And it has to be of such construction that it would withstand any earthquake forces or tremors, and it would have to be aesthetically acceptable in the neighborhood.
What are we talking about in terms of dollars? What would it cost?
In terms of dollars, based on the number of facilities that, under legal interpretation of the law, it could run in the Seattle and King County area as much as anywhere from $2 to $8 million, depending on the literal interpretation of the law and how it applies to the different types of facilities, from commercial meter sets on up to distribution and regulator stations.
And that cost would be passed on to customers, probably.
As any business, we have to do business, and the cost of doing business is always borne by the public.
Beginning next April and running through January of '79, the Seattle City Council and the King County Council have target dates for tackling noise problems, everything from motor speedways to construction equipment to float planes on Lake Union. I'm standing in an anechoic chamber. Anechoic, meaning without echo, and it is. This room is almost completely without noise, built by Boeing primarily to get better test data on the noise from their jet engines. This room is 75 feet by 65 feet by 30 feet high. These foam rubber blocks are all around, on the floor, on the ceiling, on the walls. And this room cost nearly $2 million to develop. This chamber is as noise-free as modern technology can make it. And it is not a little unnerving. My voice, for example, sounds different in here because it's not bouncing back from anywhere, from the ceiling or the walls. I would imagine that this room would be great for concentration, but spending much time in here could make you a little uneasy because of the lack of noise, of sound of any kind. The almost complete lack of noise in this room, and the tumult of everyday life outside. Somewhere between, perhaps, is where we must eventually go in order to lessen the numerous noisy distractions which affect our health and impede our performance. The next 10 seconds, noise-free, then, courtesy of Boeing and 30 minutes. Enjoy. Speaking of noise and spectacle, they call it Double 10 for 10th month, 10th day. October 10th, National Day for the people of the Republic of China on the island nation of Taiwan. For the Chinese, it's roughly the equivalent of our 4th of July, raised perhaps to the second power. Is there anybody who doesn't know by now that we're 200 years old as a nation? The Republic of China began on October 10th, 1911, founded by Dr. Sun Yat-sen just 65 years ago. Of course, Chinese history goes back more than 4,000 years. And when it comes to celebrating, the Chinese wrote the book. After all, they invented fireworks. What you are about to see can only be called a spectacle, and a spectacle seldom seen this side of Red Square in Peking or Moscow. It is pride and patriotism and discipline and determination and militarism, and it is not a little frightening to see. It must be said that an American journalist flashes back to scenes of the Nuremberg rallies in the Germany of the 30s. This is the main square, Taipei, across from the presidential palace. The organization and planning for an event such as this, incredible. There are lists for everything, and everything is checked. The sheer logistics of moving people and machines in these numbers could short-circuit a computer. October 10th, 1976, National Day on Taiwan. A masterful plan of organization. But the undertones make one pause. How will all this power and determination and pride be used? Taiwan is a strong American ally. And quite frankly, after witnessing these masses on National Day, I hope the friendship continues. We've all become keenly aware of the price of grain-fed beef. It doesn't cost as much as it did, but a good steak can still mean a hefty hunk out of your paycheck. What about cattle that are not grain-fed, can eat almost anything, and are not quite beef? We asked Solon Gray to check out this potential new food source, and he did, over lunch.
What we actually have here is the end of the story. Roger Van Dyken has raised this beefalo on his ranch, and we're about to taste it. This lovely mountain and the valley beneath it are part of the story, too, because that's where this delicious beef taste-alike comes from. The scenery is not much different from what the first pioneers saw when they first came into this great Northwest. They would have done a double take, though, if they'd seen these cattle, because until recently nothing like them had been seen on Earth. These are beefalo. They have funny knots on their heads, bumps in the middle of their backs. They come in all variety of styles and sizes, but their meat is delicious. Roger Van Dyken has found a home in this land, just like the pioneers. He's a pioneer himself, of sorts, one of several in the beefalo business. And when he walks out among his beefalo, he thinks wild dreams.
Within 20 or 30 years, I think that that every beef animal will have some percentage of bison blood in it.
And one of his bulls is thinking the same wild dreams, it appears.
Basically, all these things are mobile manufacturing plants. And they're meat production plants. The cheaper thing we can put into them to produce a higher quality meat, the better off we are. And that's the whole name of the game. And for me, a lot of it is, well, I like to see us use grain to feed people instead of to feed animals, and it's part of working with the earth to try to get as much out of the creation that we can.
The attempts to cross buffalo with cattle are not new.
No, actually, I found out back at the Library of Congress, the idea actually originated back in the 1700s. Some Pennsylvania farmer had gotten a bison and a cow together and tried to cross them and had a good deal of difficulty, as many people have had since that time.
Why? What's the problem?
Well, we're actually crossing on the biological tree two different species. And when you cross two species, it's like crossing a horse and a mule.
It doesn't work.
It's infertile, as well as some other problems with the cow dying in labor and things like this.
Well, now, these animals we see on your ranch look different from one another. It looks like you have some half Guernseys and some half Holsteins and so forth. Is that what they really are?
That's what they really are. There's some half Holsteins, some half Guernseys, and you know your animal husbandry pretty well. There's also some half Brown Swiss, some Charolais, Chianina, Simmental. I'm crossing with different beef breeds to see exactly what we're going to get and continue the experimentation.
How long does it take for a beefalo to reach full growth so that you can butcher it?
I slaughter at 12 to 15 months, strictly on grass.
How much faster is that than the normal beef?
Oh, normally 3 to 4 months faster.
So, in other words, it's worth more money.
It's worth more money faster, and it's also cheaper to feed in that you don't have to put expensive grains into them. They're just out eating grass and a lot of other interesting things we put into them.
But what about breeding? If the strain is going to spread, how's it being done?
Inside here, there's enough semen to breed about 250 animals. It's kept very close to absolute zero, and I'll try to show you one of the ampules here, which we call it. It's like that. There's 3 ampules here. Each one of those ampules is enough to breed one cow. There's about 15 to 17 million sperm in each ampule. So you can see there's quite a few million sperm floating around in there.
But as each one comes along, his sperm bank is started. So the manufacture, as it were, of beefalo has begun. Right now, it costs more to buy a quarter of beefalo than a quarter of beef. It's the old supply and demand story. There are only 30 beefalo on Roger Van Dyken's ranch near Lynden. He has 40 head of cattle. His beef sells for about 65 cents a pound when you buy a quarter of the animal. The beefalo goes for $1.20 a pound. But if this pioneer, this gambler in genetics is right, the price will drop. They are easier to raise than beef cattle, they grow faster, their meat is tenderer, their skin is tougher, their fur is thicker, they don't need grain, so as Van Dyken said, the grain can be used for hungry people, not animals.
For instance, these animals have all been fed wood pulp all during last winter. They'll be fed wood pulp all during this winter again. It's totally a recycled waste product. 10 tons of it at the Georgia Pacific plant in Bellingham are dumped into waste disposal every day. And we did some experimenting and found that it was good for cattle feed. And this is the 3rd year it's going to be on that. So things like that, if we can produce meat on things like this, high quality meat, and so far this is higher in protein, lower in cholesterol, more healthy, tastes better, that's what it's all about. And that's where I'm trying to go with this.
You always feel a certain responsibility to keep in touch with a close relative, and sometimes a phone call just won't do. We felt that way about a city thousands of miles away, a city that looks like nothing so much as a double for Seattle. Seattle's double is in Kobe, Japan. Kobe is also Seattle's sister port. She was officially recognized as our sister in October of 1957 at Mayor Clinton's request and resolution. To justify this relationship, one might expect that there would be certain similarities between our two cities, and indeed there are. The two cities look a lot alike. The fact that we're both port cities helps in this regard, land bordered by water. Then you become aware of other striking parallels. Their most prominent building is tall, square, and black. Their landmark is a slim-waisted tower overlooking the city with a rotating observation platform. Cars travel by the waterfront on an elevated roadway. Where we have a man-made harbor island created adjacent to our downtown area to handle much of our shipping industry, Kobe is just about to complete a man-made port island. Started in 1966, this island is just offshore of downtown Kobe and will help make the city the #1 container port in the world. How does Kobe compare in size? Well, they have a population of about 1,300,000. Greater Seattle can claim 1,400,000. And what kind of sisters would we be if we didn't exchange gifts? A brisk flow of exchanges between us has kept our relationship active. In an attempt to keep the trade-offs virtually even, Seattle has a volunteer organization that somehow survives on $900 a year from the City Council. This group initiates cultural, artistic, and scholarly exchanges with Kobe. Of particular fascination to the people of Kobe are our totem poles. This one stands just outside Kobe City Hall. It was carved by a Lummi Indian chief, and it stands 35 feet high. But our sister city hasn't been lax in her contributions to our landscape either. We have a huge iron bell just south of the Seattle Opera House, and a beautiful set of lanterns for the Arboretum Tea Garden. Gifts from Kobe. Our most recent gift is this stone lantern, presented just last June at the dedication of Kobe Terrace Park. This park overlooks Seattle's International District. Contrary to popular belief, the only cherry trees from Kobe are in this park. Those vandalized trees you may have heard about were from the Japanese government, and the Arboretum Tea Garden was from Tokyo. There is one colorful dissimilarity between Seattle and Kobe: the mayor's official reception center. Our mayor has the top floor of the city administration building. Kobe's mayor has a glorious garden with winding paths overlooking the city and filled with an interesting and colorful array of amenities, including 10-pound goldfish. But no matter how many miles may separate us or how different our cultures may be, some things will always remain the same. There's an international conference of Japanese and American mayors here in Seattle next year. I asked Kobe's mayor, Tatsuo Miyazaki, if he plans to attend. He says he hopes to, but says he's up for re-election and he'll see how it goes. Wes Ullman knows about things like that. What magazine would be complete without a look at what's happening on the stage and screen? There is no regular critic on television here in Seattle, and 30 minutes means to change that. Here's Wayne Shannon.
The name of the movie is The Ritz. It's rated R, and I really don't know where to begin telling you about this one, but I suppose it's a cross between The Boys in the Band and John Goldfarb, Please Come Home. The Ritz incorporates the best of neither of those two films, however. The Ritz is a farce, we're told, and it is that. The stars include Jack Weston, a normally competent comedian who this time comes in second behind the pair of blue socks he wears throughout most of the movie. Rita Moreno, who won an Oscar for Best Supporting Actress in West Side Story, portrays a Puerto Rican bombshell whose energy level reaches 10 on the Richter scale, surely. If she would have had more on, I would have suspected she had a cold button somewhere. Jerry Stiller of Stiller and Mara fame and Kay Ballard are also in the movie, and they'll have to live with that. The Ritz is about a man running away from his mafia-like brother-in-law and how he ends up hiding in a sleazy hotel in New York called the Ritz, which is sort of a sexual theme park for advocates of gay abandon. Again, it's rated R, no kiddies allowed, and I imagine a large number of adults should pass the Ritz up also. There were two really bright spots in the movie, however. Rita Moreno singing Everything's Coming Up Roses, which has to be heard to be believed, and Jack Weston, Murray Abraham, and Paul Bryce doing a lip-sync version of an old Andrews Sisters hit, which will not be believed even when it is seen. Murray Abraham is the only actor of note in this slapstick comedy, which I cannot call family entertainment. The Ritz, it's rated R. I give it 2 lights out of 5. I'm Wayne Shannon.
And there you have it, the first of a monthly series. We'll be back on December the 19th at 6:30 and hope you'll join us then. Let me hear from you if you've enjoyed what you've seen tonight, and we'll see about making these visits more often. Just write to 30 Minutes, KIRO TV. This is Jim Harriott, and the names you're about to see are some of those who helped put this magazine together. I hope you'll stay tuned for 60 Minutes from CBS. Wayne Shannon and editor Jer Reeves have combined this month's movie review with an interview with 3 of its stars.
The name of the movie is Star Wars. It's rated PG, it's here in Seattle, and it's a smash, quite frankly. Newsweek magazine calls it the movie of the year, and I am in complete agreement. And that being the case, I have some people I'd like you to meet. There's Carrie Fisher, who plays Princess Leia in Star Wars.
I recognized your foul stench when I was brought on board.
Charming to the last.
And Mark Hamill, who plays Luke Skywalker.
I got him! Great, Jim! Don't get cocky!
And finally, Harrison Ford, who plays Han Solo.
I'm Captain of the Millennium Falcon. Chewie here tells me you're looking for passage to the Alderaan system.
Yes, indeed. If it's a fast ship.
Most kids seeing this film have not seen Alec Guinness. For a lot of people, it's the first time they've ever seen him. So I'm hoping that they bring out some of those classics that he's done. It was a thrill. I mean, I'm just knocked out, and I think he's just sensational in the film.
I got to be handcuffed. I got to have a couple minutes with the black torture robot. I mean, what more could a girl want?
You're far too trust. Dantooine is too remote to make an effective demonstration, but don't worry. We will deal with your rebel friends soon enough.
I'm afraid she's scheduled to be terminated.
No. We've got to do something. What are you talking about?
George wrote an almost actor-proof part with all of the wiggles built into it, and the only thing, you know, to do is capture a kind of style which came out of the ensemble that George chose.
Was it difficult at all to relate to
No,
things
I have
that
a
go bump in the
tremendous
night?
rapport with robots and so forth. There was Tony Daniels and Kenny Baker were in 3PO and R2-D2 respectively, so they were in there. I know a lot stranger people than the people in the robots. So.
Yeah, I don't know if you'd object or not, but I would very much like a kiss for luck.
On the cheek, just like I got.
Just on the cheek.
Don't worry, Chewie. I think I know what he has in mind.
That isn't very reassuring.
That's 30 Minutes for this month. Thanks for watching.